If you are a man living in the West and in an ideal world, you would love to get married and have children, but you're worried about the current state of play in your country, I'm going to crunch the numbers for you. I'm going to show you how many marriageable women there are in your city, and I'm going to compare that to an equivalent Passport Bros city. I'm going to do some basic screening for you. It's not going to be stupid screening like she has to be an 18-year-old virgin who's a model, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to do some very basic screening and show you how many women will be left in your city who are marriable. So at the start, I'm going to assume there's 1 million people in your city. We're going to funnel that down to see how many women are marriageable in your city. So of course, if there's 1 million people, there's around 500,000 women. And if the average life expectancy for women in your country is about 85, like it is in my country, Australia, then you'll see that typically, for younger women at least, every age has just under 6,000 women of that age. So if you're a guy who's say 24, 25, you might be looking for a wife from 19 to 22. So therefore there'd be about 23,500 women in that age range. Now you could broaden this out and make like an 8-year age range or a 12-year age range. In the end, it actually really doesn't matter that much. So let's just go with this for now, a 4-year age range. The one positive thing I'm going to say in this whole video is that that's a lot of women and they're pretty easy to find. You just go to a shopping mall, you go to a cafe, you go to a bar, you go to university, you'll find big groups of girls in this age range. So that's the one positive thing. If you're watching this, I'm going to assume that you have a semi-decent SMV, you're probably on the self-development path, and let's face it, to get in the top 50% of men or the top 50% of women is not difficult. It's not that hard. So I'm going to assume that you want a woman in the top 50% of looks. That's all. Top 50%, not top 1%, not a model, just top 50%. So we're going to go this figure here and we're going to multiply that by 0.5. All right. So just a kind of decent looking girl-ish, decent-ish. We're going to say that there's just over 11,000 decent-ish looking girls in your city. Next step, I want to do some kind of adjustment for red flags. Now it's hard to know exactly how well adjusted a person is, but I want people who haven't got, or women who haven't got massively savage red flags, daddy issues, all this kind of stuff. Now I looked at this from a number of different ways, and every different kind of methodology that I employed, I found that the number was about the same, around 50% with severe red flags, 50% with non-severe red flags. So for example, if the parents are divorced, high probability the girl has some kind of daddy issues, but it doesn't guarantee it. And on the flip side of that, if the home is not broken, if the parents are still together, not divorced, then it doesn't actually guarantee that the girl has a good outcome either. But of course, it's more likely. So it averages out. We're just going to say around 50% of girls have severe red flags. So let's screen out another 50%. And we're down to just under 6,000 women. Okay, so we've screened for age, we've screened for looks a little bit, and we've screened for basic red flags a little bit as well. We also need to know that the girl has similar values to you. That's the most important thing. In a couple, you must value very similar things. If you are a man watching this, I'm going to make the assumption that you're a little bit conservative, you're a little bit traditional. That's why you're looking for a woman to potentially marry. Now, when you look at the data of voting intention, you see that around 23% of women in their 20s vote Republican in the USA. So I'm going to assume that these girls have somewhat traditional values. Let's put this in, multiplied by 0.23. So now we're down to 1,352 women. So it's not a lot, but we've still got a long way to go here, because how many of those are single? 32% of women in their 20s are single. Okay, so 68 are in a relationship or marriage. But let's be honest, of these women who are above average looks and quite traditional in their values, they're probably not single. But nonetheless, I'll just apply the 32% rule, the general 32% rule, and see what we come up with. I want to be generous here, you know. I don't want to make you think, oh, but you did that, you did this, it should be more. I just want to be really generous. So we're down to 432 women. Now from here, how many women are going to like you? If you remember that famous Match.com study where it found that women thought that only 20% of men were above average, whereas we're assuming 50% of women are above average, I'm going to cut this down to 20%. I'm going to assume that 20% of these women, who are pretty high value women, they're marriageable, they're what guys want, so they can be quite picky. So I'm going to assume that 20% of them like you. Whew, and there we have it. 87 out of 1 million people, right? A decent sized city, only 87 women are marriageable. And I haven't been really picky. You've seen what I've done here. I haven't been like unreasonably picky. There's going to be other things to consider as well. Maybe you just won't get along that well. Maybe you're just not that suited in person, because these are only very basic screens. And of course, you need to find her. How many women do you expect to meet this year, the next 12 months? How many women will you meet with an eye to potentially dating? Barely any, right? Like most people just hang out with the same people. Think about the last 12 months. How many times have you met a new woman in your life that would fulfill any of these criteria? It's not very often. So your chances of finding one of these 87 women is extremely low. Okay, what I want to do now is just give you a rough estimate of what it might look like in a slightly more traditional society. Now, do remember, most of the places where passport bros or whatever go, these aren't perfect either. These have been very, very much liberalized, especially the bigger cities. So don't live in some fantasy world of West bad, non-West good. It's not like that. And when you go to any countries, you have a percentage of very crazy, a percentage of very conservative, a percentage of everything in between. Okay, let's do the maths. We'll assume again that there's 1 million people in this city, in whatever country this is, which means roughly 500,000 women. They probably don't live as long, let's say 80 instead of 85. So you've got just over 6,000 in every age group, or every age, should I say, which means in the 4-year age range, there's around 25,000. So of course, if we again screen half based on looks, there's around 12,500. Basic adjustment, well, there's a really good chance that divorce will be a lot lower in whatever country you're going to. Not necessarily, but probably. What I can do for this one is make it around 0.8. So we're going to say 80% have not got savage red flags. But believe me, there's crazy people everywhere, and don't take this too much for granted. But I'm going to put 80% there. And now, how many have traditional values? This is just a stab in the dark. I'm probably going to say, by Western standards, probably at least 80%. But again, I'm just making this up. Let me change this to 80% and see what we come up with. All right, 8,000. How many are single? I'm just going to put the same percentage as we did for the United States at 32%. But, you know, to be fair, if you're a Western guy with a bit of swagger, decent looks, decent grooming, decent money, if you go to a country, I think a lot of women will magically become single, just saying. And finally, how many of these girls are going to be interested in you? So I'm going to put 80%. It kind of depends, like exactly where you're going. It depends on quite a few things. I'm going to assume if you're going to actually get off your ass and go to another country looking for a woman, you yourself have put in some effort. You probably look half decent, in half decent shape, done some self-development, have earned some money, etc., etc. So I'm going to put 80%. So we end up with 2,000. So in a city of 1 million, you end up with around 2,000 options compared to 87 options in a Western country. This is obviously a lot more. There are a few other problems. I mean, do they speak the same language as you? Other kind of cultural problems. Will you stay in their country? Will you bring them back to your country? What will you do for work? Blah, blah, blah. So there's other kind of complicating factors as well. In my next video, I'm going to do the same analysis as I did here, but for women. I'm going to do a passport cis video. Look out for it. It's going to be a lot of fun, and the results will probably be very, very different.